My husband Patrick died last year. Pancreatic cancer. He was a nurse, saw a lot of people die horrific deaths. Sepsis, dead gut, religious family members who thought mom/dad/granny would just walk on out of there. He started his career as a somewhat religious man, but over time those beliefs were shattered, turned him into a hardcore atheist. Despite his changing beliefs, Patty was a joker, ever an optimist. So whenever he told me on one of the several occasions if I did to him what other families did to his patients, he'd create an afterlife just so he could haunt me. He was dead serious. Hard eyes, piercing glare, aging 10 years in a moment. So I didn't. As soon as the docs said there was nothing more they could do, we went straight to hospice. I still remember his last words. "You didn't do that to me. You listened. Thank you. I won't have to haunt you now." And me, with my words said too carelessly, too emotionally charged, replied, "I wish you would." Death, like Patty, was a joker. I'm not sure of the time frame. Grief really kills that. But after he died, things got weird. Something came over me. Insanity, voodoo, obia, depression. I honestly can't tell you. I called out, "Patty, babe, are you there?" Clank. It was my pans hanging down over the sink. A cold breeze flew through my house with a noise that sounded like ghostly wails. "Babe?" Clank slightly louder wails. "I'm losing it, aren't I?" Silence. I certainly wasn't dealing with silence after losing Patty. Not again. In a few short minutes, yes, no, and don't know pans were set up to clank. "Patty?" Clank. "Yes. How is this happening?" Clank. "Don't know." For the first time, I felt joy. He hadn't left. Over time, more noisemakers were strung up to give more responses. Maybe "love it, that sucks, fuck that intruder, everything's okay," all the basics. Every day when I got home, I would begin the same. "Babe, are you there?" Clank. "Yes." The wailings, as we deciphered, weren't him. It was the death plane opening, and somehow he found a tear. I'd tell him about my day, which coworkers were annoying, which clients were downright rude, which creeps bothered me. In return, he'd clank to me about the plane. Awfully boring, it sounded, but he couldn't seem to move on as the other souls could. Not that either of us minded. We hadn't lost each other, and that was all that we cared about. Until one day, my creep of a coworker, Jackson, decided to take an interest. Interest was an understatement. Stalker was closer. He'd offer to walk me home, but where he'd try to go was the opposite direction. He'd just stop by to say hi, in completely different neighborhoods, and always with his 2 lackeys, those absolute spineless brown-nosers. None of this bothered me too much. You get used to dealing with mild sexual harassment as a woman. It bothered Patty, however, as a ghost. I thought he couldn't do much. I was deadly wrong. You know how people say when shit goes down, it goes faster than your brain can process until later? You just act on instinct? I always thought that was bullshit. Until one day. Nothing was out of the ordinary that day. I completed my usual routine down to the minute. I had just inserted my key into the lock and was expecting to just step in, as I usually did. It was a massive surprise to hear footsteps as my lock clicked open and a sudden shove on my back the second my door was open. Jackson and his posse stepped in. "You've been a royal pain in my ass, Jacinda. I've tried to woo you, flirt with you, go out of my way to make you mine. You drove me to this point." He grabbed at my wrists and was starting to back me into the door. My routine was so ingrained that even in a panic, the only thing that came to mind was, "Babe, are you there?" The room dipped cold, colder than after Patty died, otherworldly. A voice whispered in the back of my mind, "Close your eyes." I did. If I was scared before, the wails I heard sent me directly to terrified. I knew where they came from. The tear now so wide, the plane was exposed like a drawbridge opening. The screams bellowed in my covered ears, taking everything I had not to scream myself. Through the cacophony of lost souls, I heard human shrieks. I couldn't differentiate if they were mine or someone else's. Still, my eyes were sealed shut. The screams stopped in an instant. When I got the courage to open my eyes, the world was jittery. No, not the world. Me. Drenched in a cold sweat, it poured down my face, my neck, my back. My best efforts to calm down were in vain. I couldn't. Tears turned into rivers on my face. The only things more terrified than me were Jackson and his group. Faces frozen in terror, hair bleached white, youthful looks gone. Despite my stuttering breath, my voice was clear. "Babe, are you there?" I squeaked. Silence.